Hi everyone, I'm back and this is the second half of my Nightwish experience. And if you didn't get to hear the first half, you can click this link here to find it. It didn't take me very long to go through this piece. Some of the songs I've listened to up till now have taken me several days of just intense listening and studying and trying to get my head wrapped around it. This one really didn't take me more than a day. So I understand that this song is very popular. Some people in the comments have referred to the Nightwish army. And so it seems like there is a certain audience which really loves the band Nightwish and the song Ghost Love Score, which is the song that I listened to. I did some reading and I learned that this Ghost Love Score is one of Nightwish's signature songs. And so they play it on pretty much every concert they give. I also understand that it is part of what is called symphonic metal. And definitely I would say the orchestration softens the edges of the metal sound. I also read that Floor Jansen, the lead vocal singer, had quite a bit of musical training, although she is not an opera singer. Opera was just a small part of her music study. I said in the first half how I was kind of set up to expect an operatic voice, and I understand now that that's not what she is, and she's not trying to be an opera singer. And that explains some of the differences in her voice that I noticed. But her voice is, for its style, well controlled, very nice sounding, and she's quite versatile and expressive in her technique. You know, she goes from a long, sustained melody to even a long, sustained single note, where she has the ability to just carry it on, down into some of the darker vocal sounds and sometimes what people refer to as chest voice, if that means anything to you. And she can give a very powerful sound as well as a very sweet, soft, focused single line. And her voice is very pleasant to listen to. So she's a good singer. As far as the music goes, several of the commenters which recommended this piece to me mentioned that there are some unusual, kind of unique time signature changes and rhythmic elements in the song. Well, I'm not familiar enough with the rock music scene to know how common that is. But I've listened to, I guess, 5 other rock songs up till now, one of which was Metallica's And Justice for All. And I did notice in Metallica there were some really interesting time changes and some quite complex rhythms. So I don't know if that's rare now, if that was something that was Metallica's signature feature. I don't know if Nightwish is bringing it back on the scene, or perhaps it's fairly common. From my classical background, it's nothing outstanding. You know, classical musicians do that all the time. I mean, classical composers do it all the time. Maybe musicians do when they're not supposed to as well, but you know. So the fact that there are complex rhythms or interesting timing changes, to me, doesn't make a piece amazing or not amazing. It's more a question of how is it used, what effect does it have on the music, and how does the music all come together. So yeah, this song had some time signature changes, okay? That's true. But I don't see that as being something that makes it an incredible piece of music in and of itself. The song, the design and shape of the song, is kind of two-part and kind of three-part. By that I mean that in the performance that I listened to, there was a first half, and then this kind of blank spot, interlude something, and then a second half. So you could say that it's in two parts, although when I listen to the music itself, I tend to say it's more three parts because of how the song is set up in terms of melodic lines and structural design. So I kind of relate to it more as a three-part piece of music rather than a two-part. So the way I tend to think of it as being laid out is you have the opening part and then the first verse or two, however it is set up, where the voice is singing this nice, long, fluid lines, and then there's kind of a transition, some breaks and stuff happening, and then a while later there's in my first listen I called it the sea shanty moment, and I guess that's where I feel the second significant section is, in that sea shanty section. And then later the piece kind of returns to these long vocal notes that kind of create a sustained melody type shape. So that would be the third section and to the closing. That's just the way I see it. There are other ways of breaking it down, but that's how I experienced it, and that's how I tend to relate to it when I'm looking at the music. As I said in the announcement, I read over and over again in the comments recommending this piece to me that the composer, Tuomas Holopainen, he's the composer and the keyboard player, I believe, and people like to refer to him as the metal Mozart. And as I said in the first listen video, that set me up with some expectations. Actually, I had really high expectations. And maybe it kind of set me up to be disappointed in a way, because when I think of Mozart is a master in so many arenas. Not only is his output prodigious, and so much of his work is masterful in itself, and some of the greatest classical pieces are things that Mozart wrote. But also, he was quite innovative towards the end of his life, and one of the things that we musicians like to talk about is where would he have gone with his style and his composition if only he had lived longer. We'll never know. But I was expecting, maybe, I know that metal is not classical, and I wasn't expecting something classical, but I was expecting something perhaps more profound or more developed or more rich in meaning or artistic expression, and I missed that because I was expecting it and I missed it. Let me just show you what I mean by that. I don't want to give the impression that classical music is all the greats and nothing is mediocre. We have a lot of mediocre classical music, and there are plenty of pieces that I could easily never listen to again in my life and never miss. And even the great composers, say Mozart or Beethoven or Bach, they wrote music that was pretty mundane and ordinary. Not everything they wrote is some grand inspired work of art. That's the way things are. But I just want to use this as a little illustration of kind of the experience I had listening to this. I'm going to use Mozart because Mozart is what was put in my mind. If Mozart hadn't been suggested to me, I would have never imagined to compare this piece to Mozart. So I feel like what I'm doing is kind of unfair. But at the same time, it was suggested to me and put in my mind, and so I can't help it. Mozart is known for his incredibly beautiful, elegant melodies. Memorable, colorful, expressive, funny. All you have to do is remember Papageno from The Magic Flute, and you have a good laugh. Even just the way it sounds. But I'm going to use a very simple piano piece because something doesn't have to be funny or even incredibly grand and profound to illustrate the difference that I was feeling. There's this piano sonata here, which starts out, and you might recognize it. I picked one that's fairly well known. It's the piano sonata in A, and it starts like this. And even just that little bit of opening melody, you hear such a rich layer and connection of a simple line, but it's so beautifully sculpted that it has a really deep impact on the listener. I want to say that in some ways, the simplicity of it reminds me of the simplicity that I was noticing in Pink Floyd, where it was a simple little melody, nothing really grand, nothing fancy, but the way the composer handled those few notes made such an incredible experience happen. Now, as I said, not all classical music is so exquisite. For example, let's take one again that's really incredibly well known. Pachelbel's Canon in D. And sometimes I have people come to me and tell me, oh, I just love classical music and Pachelbel's Canon is my favorite piece of all time. And that tells me all I need to know. Sorry, no offense to all the Canon lovers out there. It is a lovely piece of music. And it starts like this. You'll recognize it instantly. Probably many of you have heard it, possibly even used it at your own wedding. And here's how it goes. I could even play it on the harp, I could go, let's just sit over here for a moment and continue on the harp. And so it goes. And I'm not saying there is anything at all wrong with that piece. All I am saying is that it's a different level than the Mozart piece I played as far as its musical depth. And that's what I would say about this Ghost Love score, is that I was expecting something of greater musical depth. And I was a little bit disappointed when I didn't find it, simply because that's what I had been expecting. Of course, not all music has to be deep. But that's kind of why I had the response I did in the first listen, where I was like, okay, I was expecting something else, and now what? It's over? I didn't find it. I have listened to a total of 5 other pieces of music considered to be in the rock genre. And of those 5, 3 of them have included something which I've learned is called the guitar solo. And I have gotten quite a rapid education on how important the guitar solo is to the music. And it's kind of funny because a lot of you have said, please don't stop in the middle of the guitar solo. And here I am just bulldozing on and stopping wherever I please. And it's making you all sit there in pain. But I want to tell you that in this song, Ghost Love Score, there was a moment, even though I've only heard, I think of the 5 pieces, of the 5 songs I've listened to, 3 of them have had significant guitar solos. There was Metallica, Pink Floyd, and Led Zeppelin. And you can look up my first listens of those bands. And I guess I was expecting something similar with Ghost Love Score. There was a moment where the crowd kind of grew silent, a little bit quieter at least. I wouldn't call it silent. And the singer stopped, and it felt like we were set up for this guitar solo moment. And it started, and I was expecting it to build up, and then it never materialized. It was such a weird experience because I'm so new to this kind of music, and yet already I had this sort of expectation of something. And in this Ghost Love Score, it wasn't there. And I guess I missed it. What the guitar actually did was to simply repeat the singer's melody that she had just finished singing. Well, that is also sometimes done musically. So again, I'm not saying that it shouldn't have been that way, but I had so many expectations, not only that the comments set me up for, but that the music itself set me up for along the way. Nobody told me to expect a guitar solo, but the music made me feel like there ought to be one. And then that expectation was never fully met. And that was interesting to me as I went through the piece. It does have 3 melodies in it, and they're distinct one from the other. I also read along the way of my research that this song is sometimes called, well, some people say it's the perfect example of a rock opera. Again, I had to go do a little bit of research. I've heard this term rock opera shared around, and I have heard that Pink Floyd produced some music that is considered to be rock opera. I had never, up until just the last day, looked to see what really is different between a classical opera and a rock opera. But I had to, because when I got done with this song, I was like, is there anything operatic about that? Is there anything in the form or structure that is what would be defined as opera? And I went to look and see what is rock opera. And from what I read, it's perhaps a little less defined perhaps than classical opera. Most probably because it hasn't been around for so long. It hasn't really established itself as a form so thoroughly. But at the same time, it does have certain required elements. It needs to tell a story. It needs to be a fairly dramatic story. There are usually several different voices, or even if it's all by one singer, there are several different participants in the story itself. And it's made up of multiple songs, which all come together to tell this story. And Ghost Love Score doesn't do that. Ghost Love Score is a single story, single song. It has a single narrator in its voice, as far as the words and what's being told. So it really doesn't qualify as a rock opera, even in the looser definition that rock opera gives. To me, I guess I would say, to me it is movie score music. Perhaps with some extra little solo elements thrown in because it's not put to a movie. But I could see it working incredibly well placed in the movie context. There are so many parts of the music which really have nothing happening. I know that there are times in rock music, or even classical music for that matter, but especially in rock, where you want to set up this driving rhythm and you want the crowd to just have time to get engaged and involved in that very visceral manner. But this song had places where it was essentially nothing. Sometimes the music that was happening was exactly what you would hear on a movie soundtrack to be setting up a scene. Let's say Disney is making a movie about let's say some ancient Greek battle, all right? And the music could perfectly work for that. Other times I felt like I should be seeing a mermaid come up out of the sea or something like that, where it needs something to complete it, because as it is, it really doesn't have enough musical content to be a significant, meaningful, musically meaningful work. So, for example, what I mean by that is, let's say, since I'm using Mozart, I'm going to use Mozart again. Think about the Magic Flute opera. And probably most of you will remember the pa-pa-pa-pa-pa-geno part. And you can easily listen to the entire almost 2.5 minutes without actually needing to watch the musical, the acting that goes on an opera stage. You can just listen to the music and it's still fully engaging and entertaining. For me, Ghost Love Score was not like that. For example, the beginning of the piece, which is setting up a scene, but then there's no development to it. It's sitting, it's building up, it's waiting for something to happen, something to grow, something, some event to take place, something to come, to bring it to a climax. It never does. It is simply a repetition of a rhythm, and then, for no particular reason, it shifts to another rhythmic setup. So to compare it again with Mozart, think about Confutatis from his Requiem, which in many ways has the same loud, driving, electric rhythm-like sound. And under that, you have the yada-da-da-da happening all the time, kind of like the percussive ostinato patterns that we find in rock. But it builds, and it has a shape to it, and it has a direction that it's traveling, and it has a sort of it has a unity and a focus, and it has something within it that you can hold on to. Again, I'm not saying that all music has to be like that, but this song, Ghost Love Score, kind of set me up to expect something like that, and then I never found it in there. So to sum it all up, I have to first say that I'm looking at this piece from my perspective as a musician. You have to understand that I'm not just a music consumer, classical or otherwise, but I am a musician. I am part of the creation and the production of music. And so my way of listening is perhaps a bit different than somebody who simply listens for pleasure. So I judge music on a different basis than simply whether it makes me feel good. When I listen to music and when I explore new music, I look for artistic value and depth. And a lot of that is an objective analysis. It's not about whether I like Mozart or not. You don't have to like Mozart, you can hate Mozart. And honestly, there have been phases in my life where I really didn't want to hear any more Mozart. But if you understand music, you can see simply by looking at a Mozart music score, you'll know in an instant that he was a master. You might not like his music. That's a matter of personal preference. But you can recognize the gift that was there and the mastery that existed. Having said that, I want to say that this song, Ghost Love Score, isn't anywhere near any kind of comparison to Mozart, either by structure and design, or style, or genius. I don't see anything innovative, nor anything significant, musically speaking. You know, dozens of movie score writers produce music like this on a regular basis. This is what we call commercial music. It's produced to sell. Just like some of the reactor channels, which some of you have mentioned in the comments. That doesn't mean it's bad or has no place. I also don't want to be misunderstood as dismissing film score composers as something less than, which is an accusation that has been leveled against classical musicians and composers sometimes. There are masters of the craft, and a film score composer can be absolutely genius. Even some of those composers write music which can stand fully on its own. Think Hans Zimmer, or a little older example, Nino Rota. I play Nino Rota, and I know his work. He didn't only write film score music. He was a well-rounded composer in his own right, in that he wrote solo works for solo instruments. In fact, as a harpist, I especially appreciate him because he wrote some gorgeous, beautiful music for the harp. So neither is film score composition a lesser craft, nor is the fact that somebody is a film score composer making them less skillful or less valid as a composer of solo works or standalone works, I should say. It was also mentioned to me that the London Symphony Orchestra is the one who performed the orchestral backing track to this whole work of, I guess I have a hard time calling it a song because it's more than just one song. I would tend to call it a piece or a work. In that way, it is similar to classical music. And the fact that the London Symphony Orchestra performed and recorded this for Nightwish was presented as something that increases the value of the music. Well, I have a different perspective. I'm a musician. We musicians have to eat. And if you pay, we'll play. You know, it doesn't mean that what we're performing is on the level of Wagner or Beethoven or Mozart. It just means that I got a job. So I wouldn't say that the London Symphony Orchestra's participation in the project necessarily is an endorsement of the quality or the kind of music. I'm not going to say much about the lyrics, other than that in my reading about the song and what I was researching, it was mentioned that towards the end of the piece where she sings "Take me, cure me, kill me," that it seems to have been inspired from a band called U2, which I don't know, but namely it's from a song called Batman Forever, where they play and sing "Hold me, thrill me, kiss me, kill me." I don't know if that's true, but I thought maybe somebody would be interested to hear that possible connection. I understand that the lyrics were also written by Holopainen, and the song was created around the time when they parted ways with their former vocalist. I see that he used a lot of symbolism, and I definitely don't understand the meaning behind it. I don't know if I'm meant to understand the meaning behind it. Possibly it's because I'm not familiar with the entire backstory. To wrap it all up, I want to make sure that you understand that there are some things I am not saying, because a lot of what I've said could be construed as negative or critical. I am not saying that this song doesn't have its place, that it has no use, that it's bad and nobody should listen to it, or that if you listen to it, you are some lesser intellectual level. By no means. And that is because art is also a matter of preference. And the preference is dictated by its relevance to in this case, the listener. One song can be very relevant for you where you are in a specific moment of your life, in your experience. And if this song expresses you and you find yourself in it, in other words, if it works for you, that's great, that's wonderful. And that's what music should be for everyone. So my analysis and my perhaps critical thoughts have nothing to do with that. I am also not saying that Nightwish is bad. I have only listened to one song so far, and I don't judge a musician or a band or an orchestra on one single piece. And so what I'm saying is, I'll definitely give Nightwish at least a second chance sometime in the future before I make my mind up about the band as a whole. I would say, at least when you're talking to a classical musician and you're a Nightwish fan, be careful about comparing it with Mozart. Because otherwise you might set them up for a kind of letdown experience like I had. Probably this video might cause some offense to some, but you need to understand, I'm not here to win an audience. I remember somebody wrote that this song is probably the most frequently selected for first reactions and musical reviews on YouTube. I was curious about it, and so I chose to do it. I understand that these reviews attract a large audience, even millions of views, but my goal is not to attract audience at any cost. The purpose of this channel is to help us all, the entire community as well as myself, to understand and appreciate music more and more, better and better, to increase our knowledge, to be able to better differentiate between what is exquisite and what is, good, nice, but not exquisite. And there's only one way to achieve this goal. You see, as a musician, I have to be true to myself, and I owe this also to the music, to musicians, even to my teachers, and to you, the community, the audience. Otherwise, I feel like we'll keep on building a culture which is not good at discerning differences between left, right, mediocre, outstanding, even good or bad. I hope that this video will be truly helpful for you. Of course, I will do my best to read all your comments, as I always do, both positive and negative, because I learn from both. And I'm going to pin a comment just for your questions. If you have any specific questions about this song, please list it in that pinned comment, because I will try to answer as many of those as I can. And for the other comments and thoughts and observations, suggestions, as usual, make your own separate comment for those. Also, if you didn't watch my first listen and reaction to this song, maybe you want to check it out here. And I'll see you soon when I announce my next first listen here on Virgin Rock.